The commander-in-chief and the king of all media, President Biden and Howard Stern. Names you wouldn't think belong in the same sentence, but that is exactly what happened today. In the middle of his re-election campaign, while in New York, President Biden sitting down for an hour-long appearance on the Howard Stern radio show, with the president saying he is happy to debate Donald Trump, but doesn't know when that will happen. That drew this response.
I just want to say that I've invited Biden to debate. He can do it anytime he wants, including tonight. I'm ready. Here we are. But he said today that, I'd love to debate, but he won't debate. I don't think he'll debate. Maybe he will.
Come on in. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, here we are, here we go. Hanging out with us today, Ashley Davis, former George W. Bush White House official. Chris Hahn, former senior aide to Chuck Schumer and a NewsNation contributor. Jonay Wartell is a former senior advisor in the Georgia Senate runoff election. And Aaron Perini, Republican strategist. Hello to you all. Happy Friday. We made it to the end of the week.
Yay.
That's one way to put it. A lot going on. We have a fascinating interview later on in this show about whether or not artificial intelligence can determine if you are a Republican or a Democrat. Stanford professor is going to be joining us. But first...
we want him to do it live.
Yeah, we'll have him look at our face and see what all that means.
He doesn't know.
President Biden on Howard Stern today. I'll start with the Democrat from New York. Why?
Hey now, one of the best radio hosts of all time, one of the best presidents we have right now. So we're very happy that he's there. Look, Howard Stern's got a very large audience of persuadable voters who tend to not be in the demographic category that Biden gets. So going on to Howard Stern, whose fan base is very devoted to him. I've been listening to him since I was 12 years old. I love Howard Stern, king of all media. I'm a little upset that they didn't talk about JD's gambling problem today, but you guys don't get that. Others will. I think it's a very persuadable group of people. He knew that it would be a very biographical interview. That's how Howard does it the first time he meets somebody. It was a fantastic interview. I listened to every minute of it. I thought the president sounded great. And I think it was a good idea for him to do it because people have been saying, hey, you're not sitting down with people. People are afraid People are afraid to go on Howard Stern. Celebrities avoid Howard Stern because he goes into details with them. But the president didn't.
But President Biden is also avoiding traditional media.
That's 100% correct. And this was much more of a softball interview by Howard Stern. He wasn't really going in at President Biden. But to Blake's point here, you have seen reporting this week about the strained relationship between the White House and the New York Times, that they're reporting that the president doesn't do harder interviews or really traditional interviews of any style. He snubbed the Super Bowl interview, which again would be a great persuadable audience for the president, but that's not one he wanted to engage in. They are engaging in a very strange tactic by going on Howard Stern because you talk about it being a large persuadable audience, but I don't think it's as persuadable as you think it is. It is by the host, but not necessarily
I think it is. I think, first of all, I think it was a very strong interview, proper modulation the entire time. I thought the president did a fantastic job, and it is very persuadable. This is a group of voters he doesn't have, and if he peels off just a small chunk of them, it'll have a major impact on the election.
I think it humanizes them is what it does.
Absolutely.
But I also think that this is, Trump doesn't like mainstream media either. So between the two presidential candidates, neither of them want to engage in mainstream media. Sorry, Blake.
No,
mainstream?
Trust me, we would love to have either of them on. And as you know, we would be fair and tough. But what about the headline as well from President Biden, Jonay, saying today, I am happy to debate him. Is that what's going to happen, or is that a hedge?
I think this is President Biden saying, bring it on, right? This is an opportunity for him to go face-to-face with Trump and show that contrast in real time. And so I think this is not him hedging a bet or not him trying to signal anything. I think it's him taking the gloves off and saying, let's debate on the stage.
You think he's taking the gloves off? Because, Donald Trump is basically saying, let's do this tonight. I will do this tonight here at the courthouse in New York.
And he'd be ready to do it.
These are we're not picking a fight on the playground. We're trying to pick the President of the United States. There is a commission on debates. The Democrats are participating in the Commission on Debates. The Republicans, headed by his daughter-in-law, are not.
Traditionally, there are
three.
For the folks who are watching us or listening to us on SiriusXM who may not know, there's the independent debate commission. They pick 3 for the presidency, 1 for the vice presidency, and there's a question, Aaron, about whether or not that's going to be the avenue or the mechanism this time around?
Well, under the previous chair at the RNC, Ronna McDaniel, she did put out a letter saying that they were not interested in working with the Independent Debate Commission because of concerns of bias. Now there is new leadership at the RNC. So what they do and how they do it, remember, you can have a presidential debate without the Independent Debate Commission. You can use other routes.
Haven't done it.
Well, that's true, but that doesn't mean that these are extraordinary times, extraordinary measures.
Yeah,
and
it's not that extraordinary. He's running for president. If he really means anytime, any place, participate in the commission.
How many debates do you think?
I think there's one.
Just one.
I really do. I think there's one. But debates have kind of gone out the window. I mean, Trump didn't show up at one single primary debate.
Not
which
one.
Never would have happened.
Not our NewsNation debate in Alabama. Not
but
the
that
other
worked to his
well.
favor in the primary. I truly believe.
Well, he didn't want to
But
debate.
I'm saying no other candidate would ever just say, I'm not showing up. And he was able to, and it helped him.
I think that's to the point about this being an extraordinary time. He's playing by a different set of rules because he's not a typical politician. He comes from that celebrity media entrepreneurial background. And that's why when you put these two head to head, it's going to be a different outcome. Maybe it is only one.
Ashley said one. Give me a number. How many?
I think two.
Janae?
One, Donald Trump does not want to debate Joe Biden.
I don't know about that.
I think that he is responding to a challenge. He feels challenged. He
was
like
the one who said he would do it first.
Bring it on.
I think one,
Okay.
and I think it should be a longer debate with one camera and one microphone in a studio so that we can get real answers from these guys.
Okay.
And somebody really boring as the moderator, not you.
Because I'm interesting.
You're very interesting.
I will moderate it, though. I promise.
You'll moderate
Both sides want me to do it. I'll do it. Happy to. All right. Meantime, after a week of remote school at Columbia University, due to widespread protests and anti-Semitism, students negotiating with the university president say they're at an impasse. But at the University of Florida, the school president there, the former Republican Senator Ben Sasse, laid out his rules today. Sasse sent a letter to students outlining what could lead to a 3-year ban on campus, or what could cause employees to get fired for out-of-control protests. Now, that includes no amplified sounds, no camping on school grounds, no unmanned signs, threats to others, or blocking exits. So did Ben Sasse get it right there, Ashley, at the University of Florida?
I completely agree with everything that Ben's doing, and he's president of the school, and it's his to do. 3 years may be a little bit long, but I think he's doing it right. This whole thing that's happening around the country is not.
I mean, it is remarkable that on one end, you have the president of Columbia University negotiating with students who paid to be there at that private university. And then on the other hand, Aaron, Ben Sasse saying, here it is, take it or leave it, those are the rules.
And don't come.
Right.
Yeah, Doka, I think that's right. And at this point, what you're seeing at Columbia, it's unsafe for Jewish students on that campus. And so this president originally stood up and said, we're going to shut this down, these protests are over, and then capitulated back to the students who are now dictating what is happening at this major university in the United States. You can roll your eyes all you want, but that's the reality. And if you are a Jewish student at Columbia,
I think I'm the only half-Jew on this.
You can't get to class.
The live pictures, by the way, right now at Columbia University. Janae,
Shut it down.
Do you have any objection to what Ben Sasse did?
I think the reality of the matter is these students are going to make their voices heard if they want to make their voices heard. Now, whether they're abiding by these rules that he's put in place, whether they're standing outside the gates of campus, these are students who have very passionately voiced their belief, voiced what they would like to see happen.
He's not saying you can't protest. He's basically saying don't block the exits.
Right.
Don't bullhorns the whole.
He also said don't bring weapons.
He also
bring
said
weapons.
those are sleep.
Thinks it's valid.
I don't know if it was him or
no camping.
It's perfectly fine for him to ensure that his campus is safe.
Absolutely.
That's his job as the university president. I think that in some cases this could be seen as quelling these students' ability to speak out, their free speech, and I don't think this rises to that limit.
It's 3 years. 3 years is a little harsh. I don't like hate speech at all. I don't think anybody should feel uncomfortable going to class. They should be able to walk. They should be able to get done. But when I was a student, people did sit-ins, and the administration just ignored them. They sat there for 3 weeks. Nobody cared. They stepped over them to get to their offices. It is what it is.
So
the teachers are involved, too.
Last night, I am watching the NFL draft. And we learned today that there were some 275,000 people that they estimated to be at the NFL draft last night. In the state of Michigan, which Joe Biden has electoral issues with because of all of this that's going on. And last night, not a single peep of a protest in a crowd in Michigan at the NFL draft of some 200,000 plus. What did we learn, Aaron, from the NFL last night with all this?
I think you learned two things. One, I think if you look at the demographics of an NFL audience, this isn't one that's going to be as politically motivated. To my point earlier about the president missing a persuadable audience during the Super Bowl halftime when he could have had that interview. And two, when we also speak about the demographics, you are looking at an older audience when it comes to the NFL. I'm 35 years old. I'm a diehard Buffalo Bills fan. We did absolutely nothing yesterday, much like those protesters. And so, I think the audience skews older, so this is not what you would see.
I mean, think about it. Caleb Williams, the first pick of the draft, University of Southern California junior, walked across that stage, celebrated last night in front of 200-something thousand people. The seniors at the University of Southern California
aren't graduating.
They don't get to go into the football stadium for commencement address.
That's a big miss by the university. They should have figured that out. I don't like that at all. You can't let protests, which is, again, part of college, shut down something that's also part of college.
I also think a lot of funding, most importantly, is going to start leave. The high donors that support some of these, Ivy League schools is going to go away.
Robert Kraft. He's a Columbia grad. There is a building named after him for Jewish students at Columbia, and he said, I'm not doing this.
Janae, what do you think we take away from the NFL last night? And who knows what will happen the next 2 days? I don't know, tonight and tomorrow. But what do you take away from the NFL having this massive thing? No protests.
I think people want to enjoy the moment of football, and I think that this shows that there are folks who can peaceably assemble, and there not be any ruckus, any riot, any protest, anything. And I think that this shows that the problem is not people.
And by the way, maybe it shows that Biden's problem in Michigan isn't as big as people think it is. Because we keep hearing how Michigan's this big problem.
To be fair, that wasn't all Michiganders at that event. Yeah. I know for a fact that the head of the Bills Mafia
Steelers were right there. Didn't you see them?
All right, still to come here on the Hill over the next 48 minutes or so. There are brand new numbers out today on how Americans feel about Donald Trump's New York trial. You might have an idea about how Democrats and Republicans feel about this, right? That's probably fairly obvious. But what about independents? We'll take a look at the new numbers. Plus, do you have any issue with illegal immigrants delivering your food? Why some Republican senators now have big questions for Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub, and it involves this video right there, at least some of it, not your cell phone, the moped stuff. And how good do you think AI is at determining if you are a Democrat or a Republican? Think about this. AI looks at your face and says, Democrat, Republican, whatever, and goes on down the line. You think they can do it? It can do it? Brand new study out, and the Stanford professor behind it joins us live. What AI can do with your face and politics. We're back here on the Hill. Stay with us. Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. So the first full week of arguments wrapping up today in Donald Trump's New York trial. There are new numbers out today on how Americans actually view this case. According to a CNN poll, 34% of American voters say that Trump is being treated more leniently by the criminal justice system than compared to any other criminal defendant. However, 34% also say he's being treated more harshly. 19% say they're just not sure. 13% say he's being treated the same as everyone else. All right, so I saw those numbers and I said, well, so that's 34, and if you add up the other 34, it's basically a third, right? And how do our politics break down in this country? Basically a third Democrat, a third Republican, give or take, and then a third independent or something else. So I thought to myself, all right, what are independents? How do independents view it? And here's how they view it. More leniently among independents, 33% say Trump's being treated more leniently. 27% say he's being treated more harshly. 17% say the same as any other criminal defendant. What can we make of that?
I think there are a couple of things. One, I think the 34 number you've seen versus lenient and not, that is a reflection of this country and where we are right now and 100%. All the polling you're seeing.
So on that more leniently, 60% of Democrats feel that he's being treated more leniently, more harshly. 67% of Republicans feel he's being treated more harshly.
Exactly. This is a closely divided nation. You're just seeing that reflected in the polling, and you're seeing that reflected in this trial as well. You continue to hear Republicans talk about lawfare, about how they think that this is an unjust system against Donald Trump. That's exactly what's being reflected in this polling, and I think that's being reflected in the national polling you're seeing right now. Who's up, who's down? The race is moving right now in terms of who's got the lead. Some has Trump up, some has Biden up. This is exactly what we're going to be seeing all the way to November, whether it's about the trial or the general election.
Janae, what do you make about those in the middle? Not necessarily in the middle. Well, yeah, I guess politically in the middle, but for independents or essentially non-Democrats and Republicans.
Well, I think for folks in the middle, they're watching this play out, right? They're watching kind of day by day of this trial to see like what different pieces of this are coming together, what motions are being made, how Trump is behaving in all of this. And I think they're kind of making their decision in that way. I think that...
Do you think people are following like motion by motion? Or
well, not motion by motion, but I think that they're getting the highlights, right? They're getting the highlights from their local news source and how this is being framed in whatever media they're consuming. I think that's an important lens to add to this. But I think largely folks see that, Donald Trump's on trial. The judicial system needs to run its course, and they probably have a bit of a mixed opinion, and it will depend on the outcomes here.
You know what I think? That this
I don't, but I'd like to hear.
This is week one, and if this really lasts 8 more weeks, people are going to be so sick and tired of this trial.
You think so?
I think people are sick of it right now.
Well, I think, until we start having porn stars walk out to the microphones and addressing the media, talking about what happened in the bedroom, then people might be very...
Do you think that's going to happen?
Yes.
So I think it's obviously different when we hear from Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen, Karen McDougal, right? If when they take the stand.
Yes, but the thing that points to me in those polls is that there really aren't true independents. People lean. Some of them are independent that don't nose or just not paying attention. But people lean one way or the other. They might be persuadable one way or the other, but they're not really independent anymore. Not a lot.
Was this a good week for Donald Trump or a bad one?
I think the Supreme Court case is good because it looks like it's going back to the lower courts. Yeah.
Good.
But someone did say to me yesterday, I'm sorry.
No, go on.
Someone did say to me yesterday that if it does go to the lower courts, it will be back in D.C. and they can start a trial starting in September in the D.C. courts, laying out all the January 6th
They will have to do a hearing on
that you're reliving January 6th starting in September.
They're going to have to do a hearing to determine whether or not it was an official act, and that is a very bad for him.
Good or bad week for Trump?
I think this is an overall bad week for him. I think that the reality of the matter is the more details that are coming out, the more that you see this progressing. I think people are starting to have kind of a sour opinion here.
Yep.
But folks are bored to that point. I think until this gets really salacious and we start seeing some steamy details, I think folks will largely start to tune out.
I think overall this is a pretty good week for him, especially when you look at the Supreme Court case, especially when you look at multiple times a day, Donald Trump is standing in front of a camera, pontificating exactly about what he wants to talk about. And most networks will cut to carrying that for him. That's a win for him.
But I think that's bad for him.
Yeah.
I think that's bad for him.
To that point, though, for a second, just keep in mind what happened today. Joe Biden went on Howard Stern radio. Some of those clips still aren't even out. Donald Trump went before the cameras, and that's blasted.
Yeah, look. There's only one resource you can't get back in a campaign, that is time. He is wasting a lot of time sitting in that courtroom. He hasn't done a rally. Why isn't he campaigning on Wednesday? Is he too tired? Is he getting too old to do this anymore? I think that's probably what it is.
Why isn't he?
That's what I'm going to say.
I mean, that's a question for his team, but he is out there right now. He actually did go up to the mics yesterday and talk about the economy. He's out there. He is hitting political points sometimes when he gets
up to those. He brought up Charlottesville yesterday. Fun.
Hey, let me tell you, you want to have the dog in the fight. At least he's in the fight. He's taking it right to Joe Biden, who tries to continue to use that as the reason why he runs.
In a courtroom and not campaigning.
And cameras carry it all the time. Look at us still talking about it right now.
Because the guy is on trial. The guy is a criminal defendant. Was he treated more leniently? Of course he was. I'd be in jail if I said half of those things to a judge.
But then the other argument is, should the case have been brought to begin with?
Yeah, exactly.
At the federal level, they decided not to. Anyways, we could keep going on and on, but still much more ahead. Here on the Hill, your face and your food. Yes, that's what we were talking about. Can AI take a look at your face and determine how you lean politically? And do you really care who's delivering your food, your Uber Eats, your DoorDash, your Grubhub, whatever? Why some members of Congress actually do, and why now they want answers from the CEOs of those companies. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. We're back in a few. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. So can you tell somebody's political leaning based on what thing along with it, basically, can you tell their political leaning based on their face? That's really the question. It turns out that artificial intelligence just might be able to do that. Researchers have created a facial recognition tool that can identify conservatives and liberals based on only tiny nuances in people's faces, and it has a hit rate of roughly 70%. The AI found that liberals tend to have, get this, smaller, lower faces, while conservatives have larger, wider faces. Joining us now is the study's lead author, Dr. Michael Kaczynski. He is an associate professor of organizational behavior at Stanford's Graduate School of Business. Dr. Kaczynski, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Appreciate it. So I want to start off by showing the images. You know them, but let's put them up on the screen. Of basically, they're super close, but on the left is conservative and on the right is liberal, and AI is able to tell by the tiniest margins. Explain how this is possible.
And it turns out that not only AI, but also humans can distinguish between those two images. So, as you mentioned, there are some differences that we can interpret, like the width of the face, but there are thousands of other differences in our faces. It's just that we humans, while we can perceive them, because we can make a distinction, we cannot really explain how we are making this decision. The same applies to AI. Those very complex neural networks can distinguish between liberals and conservatives with the same accuracy as humans can, and yet it's just difficult to tell what particular features they're picking up.
But what is it about the face, right? Because if we talk about, I don't know, the First Amendment or abortion, I can probably tell you spot on if you're a conservative or a liberal. But what is it about certain aspects of the face that AI is able to pick up and detect and say, oh, that means they're lean left, oh, that means they lean right?
Well, it's absolutely unsurprising that our appearance, and our facial appearance in particular, should be related to our psychological traits, such as political views. First of all, what we look like changes how people treat us. And when people treat us differently across your lifetime, this will change your political orientation. For example, attractive people are treated very differently from those of us that are not that fortunate to have attractive faces. Attractive people receive better salaries, better grades. They are promoted more easily. They win elections more easily. And this, of course, over the lifetime, is going to affect their facial features. But there's just many other mechanisms out there. Like your political orientation is affecting how you're spending your free time. And how you spend your free time, whether you do it, sitting somewhere in a basement or shooting ducks outside, is also going to affect your facial appearance.
Do you think we're going to get to a point where AI can be at a 100% hit rate or pretty darn close to it?
Well, 100% is unachievable. People, sometimes change unexpectedly their political orientation, but we're definitely observing AI becoming more and more accurate at predicting our intimate traits, sometimes even before we ourselves know that we have a particular trait or a particular view.
So let's take this out of politics for a second, Doctor, because now it can basically, at a 70% rate if you're lean left or lean right. Here's an example I was thinking about today, for example. Are we going to get to a point where you walk into a restaurant and if there's facial recognition technology or AI, they'll know if I want steak or if I want salad or if I want, fish or meat or whatever? Like, are we going to get there at some point?
Well, a good waiter can do it already today. It turns out that people who like steaks and big desserts look slightly differently from people who like salad. And good waiters, experienced waiters, can usually very well tell the difference. And so in some ways, this is nothing new and it's nothing magical. It's just that AI technology can achieve accuracy that is unthinkable for humans. And also you can deploy it very cheaply on a massive scale, which creates huge risks. A person can judge, few people a minute or few people per hour. Artificial algorithm can be unleashed on billions or millions of pictures obtained from social media or the database of passport pictures.
Dr. Kaczynski from Stanford University, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. Have a great day. Have a great weekend, sir. What'd you take away from that?
Conservatives are fatter.
You think that's what he was saying?
He said our faces are wider.
Wider and longer?
Wider.
Let me ask you this: Are you buying this? That AI can? I mean, so what happened here was they basically, it was blank expressions, same color T-shirts, all those sorts of things, and it was able to identify at a 70% rate if you're conservative or liberal.
If this is even partially true, the movie Minority Report is becoming a reality in America, and we should all be terrified of it because it's going to stink, okay? And we're going to be sold things all the time. I don't quite buy it. Like I said, we were joking in the break. Nobody's going to look at me and Ashley and determine that I am the liberal and she's the conservative. It's never going to happen. Or any of us, really. And while you all were probably treated very well because of your good looks, I did okay. So, you know.
What'd you take away from him there, from the doctor there?
I mean, the differences when you did the side-by-side seem relatively slight.
And so you could barely, when I was looking at it,
you could barely tell. You could barely tell. And so I'd be interested to see this, with folks whose facial features or dimensions are a little bit more distinct.
Yeah.
But I think it's very interesting because I think that, we are a society that can be in a lot of ways judging the book by its cover or looking at folks and assuming we know a lot about their lifestyles and beliefs.
So do you think that is, as I was listening to that and you bring up the point, do you think that was judging a book by its cover, or do you think that was technology actually being, technological and getting to the bottom of something?
I'd say perhaps a little bit of both, right? I think that, some of our technology really is maybe keeping up with some of our human concepts and our human assumptions in social science. So I think maybe this is the melding of the two.
Well, I'm very curious, one, what the definitions are of, what they're seeing that's making someone a conservative versus liberal, but also, what's the X factor for, facial fillers or Botox or cosmetic surgery? You can alter your face so much, when it comes to that,
it depends on where you live, frankly.
And frankly, it would make organizing on a campaign, talking to voters on the campaign, very interesting practice because we'd be walking up to folks assuming we know what their political leaning is.
Chris
Direwalt did a breakdown here on the Hill, I don't know, about a month or two ago, and basically made the case that AI is going to help less known, lesser funded candidates. That, some campaigns have these big apparatuses and money and advantages, and AI will shrink that gap going forward. Who won? Took the state? Jason Palmer, right? The district. What did he win from Biden? One of the territories, and he.
Oh yeah. The Virgin Islands. American Samoa.
American Samoa. There you go. And he used AI to his advantage, and that was like a real life example.
Right.
This political cycle. All right. Meantime, back here in Washington, 3 Republican senators are launching a probe into Uber Eats, Grubhub, and DoorDash. It comes after reports that illegal immigrants have been paying a fee to use the accounts of friends and relatives so they can deliver food. Senators Marsha Blackburn, Mike Braun, and Ted Bunn writing to the CEOs of those companies, quote, "These illegal immigrants are delivering food directly to consumers' doors without ever having undergone a background check and often without even using their real names. Deliveries routinely occur late into the night, compounding the dangerous situation, and if the unimaginable happened, there would be little to no way to track the immigrant or bring them to justice." So here's, I think, how this cuts. Is this ingenuity? You got to make money somehow to feed yourself and feed your family, or is this, in a way, illegal?
Well, the companies need to figure it out. And Senator Blackburn and Senator Braun and Senator Budd they're 3 senators that are going to go after them. And I'm surprised there's Democrats not on this bill, too. Because if you think about my 15-year-old who does DoorDash every other day, I don't want him alone and people don't have a background check late at night. I think it's... Go ahead.
No, so it's like when you order from, Doug and Susie shows up on your door. Wait a minute, I thought I was ordering from Doug. Yep. That's sort of what they're hitting at.
There has to be a way that the companies figure how to solve this problem now, and they need to do it.
Well, they have to be responsible for who's showing up at the door for them. Forget about the xenophobia that's probably attached to why they're actually doing this bill. But companies need to be responsible. Absolutely. Whenever Marsha Blackburn is speaking about something like this, there's some xenophobia behind it.
It will take one heinous act by a DoorDash or an Uber Eats or a Grubhub driver.
They do need to have accountability for who's delivering their product. They also need to be paying taxes on the people who are delivering their product, and they need to make sure that those people are properly paid.
I mean, from a safety and security standpoint, this is frightening. When you think about the fact that, I've been one who's experienced having a driver from a rideshare company pick me up who is not actually the person who...
Right, that's the... right.
Right.
You order from one person and somebody else...
And it was frightening. And I think about, the potential for them to have two-way security measures where the person who is actually on the receiving end of an order can actually verify, right, that the person who is the picture in the app is actually the person who's picking them up or the person who's delivering their food. I think there are ways for companies to use technology to their advantage to that degree, because to the point about there being one heinous act, it only takes one time for this to be a crisis, and companies shouldn't let it get to that point.
So DoorDash told Newsweek in a statement, to be clear, there is no place on the DoorDash platform for those that can't or won't verify their identity. Every Dasher is required to have their own verified account. That is part of the statement. I don't think anyone would push back on that, of course, being right, but then it's how do you prevent?
Right.
How do you prevent fraud, right? Because that's the bigger question here. If people are able to, cartels, they're out there to make money. Like, these people are out there to make money as well. And so if you are out there and you're saying, hey, I can buy your identity and I can use your account and I can make money, you see people out on these scooters all of the time.
They know where you live.
All DoorDash.
And all they need to do is, listen, I am a woman. If I was by myself and somebody else that I didn't expect showed up at my door, you better believe I would be terrified, and I would be raising holy hell to these companies about it. This is a problem. Why not prevent it?
I agree.
Why not
all the company needs to do is activate facial ID on their apps.
So we just went through that.
Well, no, I turned my phone on right now by looking at it.
Why do you take issue to the Republican senators taking this? Because I just heard everybody lay out all the good things, and then you.
I agree with the policy.
You're just not liking this.
I agree with the policy.
Super conservative.
I agree with the policy, but I've heard her talking. I'm definitely being biased, but that's why I'm here. I'm somewhat biased. That's who I am, without a doubt, being biased. But I agree with the sentiment of the bill. I think you have to know who's picking you up, who's delivering your food, and it's a very simple solution. This phone has facial recognition software on it. I just opened it by looking at it. It's an amazing technology. They could put it on DoorDash apps. They could put it on Uber apps. They can make their drivers use it. And
sounds like they've got a lobbyist they got to hire over here.
Can I tell you one thing?
I am available.
One thing I love about Ashley, how she starts and she goes, Marcia, Senator Blackburn.
Yeah,
you just
polite,
first name check people because you know them, and then you can say, the senator. Anyway, still to come here from the Hill on NewsNation.
I have known her for a long.
There you go. I do it. If you thought flying was a nightmare now, is it about to get much, much worse? A major announcement from Southwest Airlines and what it could mean for your summer travel plans. The Hill returns on the other side of the break.
Rosie O'Donnell, Bill O'Reilly.
Only Cuomo could bring that group together.
A special encore of Cuomo.
It's not just because you're both Irish.
Yeah.
I love that you were willing to come on here and have a conversation.
Tonight on Cuomo at 8/7 Central, only on NewsNation.
They reported a loss of $231 million in the first quarter of this year. Southwest blaming their financial struggles on Boeing delivery delays, since all planes for Southwest come from Boeing. Southwest is also known for their single-class open seating arrangement, but now the company is also considering changes to that in order to drive up revenue. Does this mean hello travel troubles? Is that what we're going to see this?
I think the open seating policy on Southwest, I live on Long Island and our airport only has Southwest for the most part. Really? And that open seating policy is ridiculous. It becomes a cattle rush to get onto the plane. You can't sit with your
So you want them charging for it?
Yeah, I don't care.
I mean, it's better.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I mean,
open
I don't like it. I don't fly it.
Chaotic.
I like it.
Full
Yeah.
Amtrak.
It's chaotic.
Before COVID, when you would go to Amtrak, it was a bull run down.
Amtrak assigns seats now.
Yes,
Well,
I think
it
it
does. I
don't know if the regionals are going to sell it. Like, it's completely set now. I don't want to get trampled getting on a plane.
It's you walking down the middle, walking down the aisle, looking for people not having a middle seat.
Yeah. It's like bad.
What does it say, though, that this company's losing $250 million
Well, they
in a quarter?
had major issues. When was that? 6 months ago? When they canceled all their flights.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
They lost. That was at the end of last year, I guess. But
it also
they've been
Boeing
sucking wind for a long time.
Yeah, it's the Boeing headlines, too.
Yes.
Like, this continues to go back to the issues that Boeing is facing. Their production issues, the safety issues that have been reported, and now that seems to be a large issue of what's happening with Southwest. Consolidation, it's still a large airline. They're still going to concede. They're still going to, be able to make money, but you're looking at taking it out of 4 airports. That's, the 2,000 jobs is probably the bigger part part of that, I would think. That's a lot of jobs.
Huge. A lot of jobs.
That's a lot of jobs.
A lot of jobs.
All right, and you saw all the companies there that Boeing impacts. All right, meantime, it's a car, it's a plane, or is it both? A company in Slovakia made history this week, completing its first ever passenger flight of its air car. Would you look at this? Take a look at this. You know, we've talked about that for, decades, years easily? It's what it sounds like, a hybrid vehicle with retractable wings, and it can go up to 120 miles per hour on the road and in the air. The air car reportedly set to hit the market next year, retailing for some $500,000.
That is not a flying car. That is a plane that looks like a car.
It looks like a glider with plane
How do you
wheels.
drive that with the wings that far out?
Like on a highway.
We were promised a flying car by now. I'm a little annoyed. Okay, get that professor back on from with the AI. Can you figure this out?
We're still trying to do full self-driving technology, right? Let alone something like this. By the way, did you hear about this? On Thursday, the California Congressman Adam Schiff had his luggage swiped from a San Francisco parking garage, forcing him to attend a Senate campaign dinner in casual wear. The incident comes on the heels of another California break-in on Sunday at the home of the Los Angeles mayor, Karen Bass. What's going on there in the state of California?
Well, they don't put anyone in jail for committing crimes, so.
And now it's coming back to Adam Schiff. It's coming back to Karen Bass.
Yep.
I think he probably wishes he paid for the valet at this point.
Adam Schiff?
Saying, yes.
What's going on there in California?
I mean, there's a rising crime in many American cities. You know, I don't think we can pinpoint this exactly on San Francisco. I think we got to look at what's happening across the nation. But it's an unfortunate circumstance, and I think it highlights a problem that is nationwide and not just
I do have to say, though, which I do agree with you on one sense, but a lot of other major cities, Philly, here, actually, the crime is going down, and California is not. So, and that's just over the last 3 months data. So.
You can also look at a city like New York, right, where you see really aggressive crime. But again, to your point, Ashley, I think it's very fair to talk about how they're not prosecuting crimes, how they're not locking people up. You're seeing mayors in California more concerned with getting pandas than they are about homelessness and crimes in their street. And of course, it's going to affect everybody every day, and that is exactly what these members are living now.
Crime is lower now in New York than it was on any day Rudy Giuliani was mayor of New York City, for the record.
Larceny in San Francisco has been ticking down by month, but when you look at the numbers, it does go up and down. Either way, these two cases highlight what's going on in parts of that state. Meantime, this question made its way through the federal government this week. Should chocolate milk be allowed in school cafeterias? The Biden administration initially floated a ban on flavored milk in public schools last year, but this week, the Department of Agriculture announced they are abandoning that previous proposal, now saying that chocolate milk can be served on school lunch trays as long as it complies with new sugar limits. So there you go. The chocolate.
I'm here for it.
Why does this drive you crazy?
Well, this stems back to Michelle Obama's initiatives.
That's why it drives you crazy?
No, just the whole,
the whole back and forth?
No, micromanaging kids' food. I mean, first of all, this is the first. Some of these kids may only be drinking milk, chocolate or not, the only time in their lives during the day when they're at school. Yeah. Because they're not able to buy it at home.
I don't want Ashley to say I'm biased, so I'm going to pass this one. I love chocolate milk.
So do I know I'm happy it's there.
On the one side,
I'm a runner. Runners drink chocolate milk.
I agree with Ashley, though, completely on this. Like the amount of government conversation about chocolate milk at schools when we are also in the same block talking about crime in these major and flying cars. Like there are other things the government needs to be more worried about than whether or not a child enjoys chocolate milk. You get to enjoy your youth for only so many years, and if that means you get the nostalgia of having some chocolate milk at your lunch,
it's about what is the nutritional value
This is
of
what
what's going
would
on.
drive Trump supporters crazy, government in your life.
Yeah.
But they're not.
Things like this.
They're not
Like
doing
this.
it.
Well,
They did the right thing. They examined it and they came to a
As a kid
conclusion
in the
that everybody can
90s,
live with.
I'm pro chocolate milk.
There you go. All right, a look ahead to this Sunday, by the way, here on the Hill. The Democratic senator from Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, joins The Hill Sunday with Chris Stirewalt for an exclusive and wide-ranging interview here in studio. That is 10 o'clock Eastern, Sunday morning, The Hill Sunday with Chris Stirewalt, Senator John Fetterman. I think he has become one of the more fascinating people, certainly one of the most fascinating Democrats, Jonay,
Agree.
in recent months. What is it about this sort of turn from him?
I mean, I think that like he has always had, even in his campaign and when he became a senator, just a fascinating personal story. I think a fascinating approach to politics. I think he's always been unafraid to stand out. He's always, challenged his colleagues in times when he's felt like politics has become too polarized. I think he's really a rebel in a lot of ways, and I think that's why a lot of people respect him.
I think he's a perfect reflection of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I think that's what he is.
He's gone away from the progressive part of the wing, and as you said, sort of moved more right, more libertarian, however you want to put it.
The unapologeticness is of what I really think is refreshing, where he says that this is what I believe. He's standing with Israel. He's against.
I'm from Pennsylvania, and I never would have thought how much I like him as I do.
Yeah. John Fetterman with Chris Stirewalt Sunday morning. But before then, and before we go, why one governor is saying he will not comply with a new rule put out by the Biden administration. Who is it and why? Leland Vittert joins us on the other side of the break. We're back in a few. All right, so before we say goodbye, here's a story that caught our eye as the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, says he is going to defy the Biden administration.
Florida rejects Joe Biden's attempt to rewrite Title IX. We will not comply, and we will fight back. We are not going to let Joe Biden try to inject men into women's activities.
Now, last week, the Biden administration released revised Title IX rules, which revise protections for LGBTQ athletes. However, Florida's education commissioner says that move violates the law. And you heard from the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, there himself. Leland Vittert, host of On Balance. Hello, happy Friday.
And to you.
We could obviously talk about the Title IX aspect of this, but I find it fascinating that he's basically saying, you know what, we're going to defy the president. This is a guy who wants to be the president of the United States one day. What happens if he's president and a Democratic governor says, I'm going to defy President DeSantis?
He'll do the exact same thing that President Biden will do, which is that
I'm the president, you're the governor.
And he'll do whatever power he
Call me Mr. President.
I think what's interesting about this is how he framed it, which is we're not going to allow the injection of boys into girls' sports.